You're listening to Chicago Stories, a podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans, as told to Mayor Emanuel.
I want to welcome everybody to Chicago Stories. This is Mayor Emanuel. I'm here with Reginald Robinson, who is a MacArthur Genius Award winner, self-taught piano player, self-taught ragtime historian. Do I have that right also?
Yes.
Okay. And just all around great guy. Self-taught too.
Thank you.
Although your family may have a view on that they're on that.
Yeah.
So, and also everybody should know, Mr. Robinson came to our Pianos in the Parks to play for the kids and to launch our second year of having piano out in the parks, and some people just going ahead and playing it out there.
Yes.
It was I really do appreciate you making time for that.
Oh no, it was wonderful. I mean, I love to do things for children and inspire them. So that was a wonderful opportunity. Yes.
Walk people. There's two things that I've read that I'm fascinated with. One is you were self-taught on both the piano and is it history of music or history of ragtime?
Really, the history of ragtime. Yes.
And now you teach it. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm share what I've learned. I also do research, and what I'm really interested in is finding the unknown, finding musicians who are forgotten or obscure, stories that have been long forgotten. But the way I do that is searching through the newspapers, Chicago newspapers, and just newspapers from around the country. So this is how I find out about it. And I've uncovered some long forgotten musicians.
Like who? Give me two people.
Oh, wow. Now if I say it, then some of the other musicians.
It's not a pop quiz,
some of the historians are gonna the ones who are really interested in ragtime. They may latch on to it.
Right.
But I'll go around it. I found some musicians who were in Chicago who were operating. They actually traveled in vaudeville. These are black musicians, and they traveled around the country, even had music published and did theater, but they're long forgotten. And some of their music had been recorded in the 1920s by some popular singers. Really? Yeah, the only way to find it out, you look on the records of these, from the people who sung it. They don't list who the composer. But
they don't give them credit.
They don't give the composer credit. It's like unknown or whatever. But when you look at newspapers, you see where this composer, that song is listed under their name.
Right. Yeah. We're going to go right to your more informal name, and mine is. So, Reggie, tell me, though, how ragtime, I mean, I kind of get its introduction here in Chicago, as I'm right, at the World Expo. And it's kind of the foundational piece to jazz. But how is it like not as, or maybe it is as popular, but you know about jazz, you know about bluesies, or you know about folk music, but ragtime is also American. It doesn't sit up there with the icons, or am I like just showing my ignorance?
Because, well...
And you can say, no, you're in a safe space, you can call me ignorant. Go ahead.
No, I wouldn't. What I realized is that ragtime was a progression to what was called later jazz. It was a way that the music was played. It had its own rules, though, but it was leading to jazz. It was jazz, but it was an early form of jazz.
What do you mean by when you say leading with its own rules? Well, with its own rules, what would be? How would if I was taking a class with you, how would you describe the rules of ragtime but as foundational for the rules of jazz?
Well, the rules of ragtime in those days, and during a period of Scott Joplin, writers like that. Scott Joplin, what he would do is write. I don't know how he played in live concerts, but I imagine he improvised. I imagine he had the skill to be able to improvise, make things up right on the spot. But he notated his music. He wrote the emotions into his music. He wrote everything that he wanted to be played into the music. So ragtime has this character where all these emotions are in the music as you play it. Jazz is different. You put the emotions in as you play. And the chords, basically the chords are the basis for improvisation. I imagine though with people like Jelly Roll Morton, who was back then from New Orleans, that a lot of musicians were already doing it, like he was doing. He was playing ragtime, but he's one of these musicians who's recorded. He's on record, and saying, "Oh, I did this in 1905, and I was doing this in 1902," and years like that. But he said, "This is jazz," and what a lot of musicians are playing is ragtime. They're just good ragtime piano players. So he had.
You think ragtime had a bigger audience than jazz early on?
No, it was the same. It was the same leading up to jazz. It like progressed right into jazz because, and I often tell people that a lot of those musicians, people like Joe Jordan, were writing. You can look at his ragtime pieces from 1903, and when you hear him in 1929, his ragtime pieces in 1903 sound like music from 1903, but in 1929 it sounds like musicians in 1929 when you actually hear him on record playing.
It just matured that way.
It matured that way. You can hear James P. Johnson, a great stride pianist, in 19 piano rolls from like 1917, and then you hear him from like 1940. He's 1940, and you can hear the style is different. In the earlier days, it had a stiffness to it. You could tell he was very inspired by Scott Joplin and the earlier players. But then by 1940, it was like really relaxed. It was swinging and different.
How come there is no other? I mean, this is not in Europe at the time, etc. It's a unique American sound, ragtime.
Yes.
And it's in New Orleans, St. Louis, and Chicago, Memphis, kind of the big that part of the country, or is it much bigger?
It was wider. I mean, ragtime music reached into Los Angeles, places like that. Yeah. So it caught on. It was all over the country.
So recently I read, let me switch gears, you're self-taught, and you were about, if I'm not mistaken, throw in the towel, say I can't make a go of this, and you win the MacArthur Genius Award.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, I was, at the time I was, let's see, what year was it? 2005. I was here in the city trying to make a living and just in music, and I said, well, I'm not getting jobs like I think I should be getting, but I understand because the kind of music that I like that's coming from my soul. A lot of people don't. You have to really be a fan of that kind of music. Mostly what's popular in this city is blues, modern blues, modern jazz. And that kind of style, like as far as like jazz or classical or whatever. I think that's what people also want to hear in clubs and. And I always look at it like people seem like they want to really hear music that they talk over. I go in these clubs and I see musicians blowing away. I mean, they can play, really can play, and everybody's talking and drinking, and like they're not even listening to the music. But ragtime demands attention. You can't just talk like that. I've seen people talk at ragtime festivals, but that's the crowd. These people, they meet everywhere, all over the country. So I see the same people in Missouri that I see in California. So yeah,
just traveling, following it.
Yeah, so they talk.
But you were about to throw in the towel, and you get Give me the moment you get the. How's the MacArthur? Is it like the Nobel? You get the phone call at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I had that day. I had the day before. It was like just I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday, September.
We'll take your word for
20th.
It. Okay.
Yeah, and the week before I had just been putting in job applications. I said, well, I just need steady money, regardless to whether I'm doing music or not. So that Monday I was thinking like laying back on the bed, thinking like, I think it was about 9 a.m., somewhere around there. And thinking like, well, I'm going to follow up on what I put in last week, the applications, and I'm going to go out and look for some more jobs. And I got that ring, the phone ring about 9:20, I think 9:28. I get up, looked at the phone, and I'm like, John D. and Catherine. That's all it said. I think Catherine, and I knew what that was already. I'm like, why are they calling me? I'm like, okay. So I asked. I knew, I know the name from documentaries and things like that on PBS. But I had no idea about it.
Thank God for that public television. Otherwise, you would have hung up and said,
"That's right."
They were a collector, a bill collector.
Yeah, I've heard that some people hung the phone up like, this is crap. They hung the phone up, but
the gist of it is,
yes, it was sort of like we want to give you this great news. And Dan Sokolow, who was the president of the foundation at the MacArthur, the Fellows program at the time, He was like, he introduced himself and said, I have one of the best jobs in the world. I get to call great people around the country and give them the great news. He said, the great news I want to give you is that you've been selected as one of our MacArthur fellows. I was like, okay. I didn't say it like that, but I was like, okay. I was waiting to hear what this. He said, and you have
what comes with it.
Yeah, he said, yeah. It's like, well, you know, I want to let you know that you have you won $500,000, and that comes. He said, I'm not faking you now. This is not a hoax. I want you to know it's not a hoax. I'll give you my phone number. You can call me back. And he said, we all here in the office here, we all quietly enjoying this moment to give you this call. And then he went on to tell me about in 8 days it'll be in the media, you know, all the details.
So who's the first phone call? You hang up. Do you call him back or do you call? Who's the first phone call?
I didn't call him back.
Okay.
He said you'll receive a letter and I think somebody else called me back after that. And
who do you call first?
Oh, yeah, right. I was told that. He said you can call one person if you like. Who I called was my mother. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I waited to think about it for a moment. I didn't jump up like some people. You know, when
you didn't have that Egg McMahon moment.
No, I didn't have that. That's what I thought about too. I was like, no. I was just like,
So now the other thing is, I mean, as I understand, you were thinking of throwing in the towel or not making music the centerpiece of your kind of life. Here you get this lifeline, but you just came through. I think you did you've described it as a slump.
Yes.
What's that like? And what does it take to get out, or does it just snap one day? What's it? For those of us who aren't artists, I mean, I've heard of writer's slump. Obviously, there's musical slump, etc. There's athletes that go through a slump. What does it take to get out? What do you got to do for you, and what worked for you?
For me,
and you just wrote a new album.
Yeah. For me, it's like I was telling a friend, I'm not one of these kind of musicians who can write the blues. Mm-hmm. And I'm having the blues. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. I have to be happy to write sad music. I can write sad music. As long as I'm happy, I can write any kind of emotions of music. But I can't be struggling without, you know, not able to live and concerned about bills. And I can't write music in the dark, you know, be happy. Like, let's sing in the blues. I can't do that. I'm not one of those kind of musicians. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I was in a slump, because I was struggling to try to make a living, you know. And so that's the way that's the way to get it for me to not be in a slump, is to be happy. You know, I have to be happy, and I can write all kinds of music. So yeah.
What's the name of the new album?
Oh, the new album, that the last one that was released last year, is the music of Reginald Robinson, live in concert. Yes. You mind playing a piece or something? From I can play something from it.
You can play whatever you would like.
Yes. Let's see. Of course, I'm playing solo. That album is an album of orchestra. Is what I'm trying to say.
Right. All right. This is called Sweet Envy.
Sweet. Yes. Sweet Envy.
Okay. That's
Thank
all.
you.
You wrote that, and you taught yourself, and you taught yourself how to play.
Yes, I wrote that one in 1995.
And you're self-taught.
I am, yeah.
That's unbelievable.
The thing is I was not trying to be self-taught. I wanted a teacher, but family, my mom and dad couldn't afford that with other things. That was not in the budget. So my mother was able to. my mother managed it.
You were not in the family budget.
The music lessons was not in the family budget. Yeah. So what I did, my mother was managed to purchase a piano. First, it was a keyboard, a small keyboard that I started practicing on, and after that, she managed to get a piano, a full-size piano, and I was so happy about that because it was 88 keys. I was like, man, I'm really gonna teach myself. I learned how to play this thing, and my inspiration was Scott Joplin. So, maybe I should tell you about all that story, but I think some people know about it. But I got into music, get interested in music. It started with my brother, second oldest brother. He was listening to big band music from the late 1930s and 40s. He got into that after hearing it in school in the office. Some little old ladies was listening to this music. They had it on one of those old stations, like old time radio stations. And he happened to hear it, and he inquired about it, and that's what then he started listening to it at home. And at first I was like, he introduced me to it, and he was like, you should listen to this. And I was like, oh, okay. I listened to it, and I said, this stuff sounds corny. And so I kept hearing him, listening to it every night, and eventually I started taking a liking to it. And that was the beginning for my interest in the old music. But one day we had an assembly in 7th grade. This was around the same time. We had an assembly in the auditorium, and these musicians put on a show called From Bach to Bebop. And pretty much, that says it all, from Bach to Bebop. They covered all these different styles of music. And about the middle of the program, I heard the familiar Ice Cream Truck song. I can play a little bit of it, but I'm sure people know what it is. Yeah, and that was the beginning of my interest in ragtime. Yeah, so I said that this is what I want to play. My brother, he was playing the guitar, and just at home, not playing professionally.
Any of your parents or their aunts or uncles in music, but you and your brother get exposed to music, and that becomes.
Well, we had a neighbor, a couple houses down, who had a band,
right,
and he was playing music sort of like Prince at the time. And he had a large group of people that he had in his band. We would see them come out all the time, walking up the street, getting ready to go to perform. And, I would see him walk on this guitar on his back, and he had a whole bunch of people following. I was like, wow, he was like the neighborhood star. Right.
So let me ask you this. If you said, okay, I want to know more than Scott Joplin, give me 2 artists you got to know that are ragtime artists.
Oh, wow.
Who you're
the greatest writers. Scott Joplin was the top writer.
Okay.
Next to Scott Joplin is James Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, and another one is Joseph F. Lamb. Yeah, those were the great. But then there's other ones too. There's other writers, and I don't want to keep them out. Harry P. Guy. I mean, fantastic writers. There's another guy, I forget his name. Artie Matthews. Yeah,
I knew that. I was just testing you. Okay. Let me ask you this question: do you think is it an art form still vibrant out there?
I wouldn't say it that way. I think there are still writers, people who are who love that style, like myself, who write in that style. But I realized it was in progression. It was progressing towards. It was always on the move. Those writers they weren't stuck in a particular style. Scott Joplin was trying to push the boundaries. He was, and that's what I realized about his writing. He was never satisfied with what was going on. He would listen to his music, The Entertainer, and he wanted to outdo that and do something that people had never heard before. So he was always pushing forward, all the way up to his death in 1917. His music kept getting more and more advanced and more leaning towards what became known as jazz.
Would you describe him as a modern or a classic ragtime? Classic?
He was, in his time, he was modern, and that's a very good question. I think that he was more like.
Don't think I'm smart. Somebody else wrote it for me.
Scott Joplin was.
But now that it sounds so smart, it's my question. Okay.
He was modern. His style was more.
Do you do teaching? Do you do teaching?
More so lectures on the music.
Lectures?
But I have taught. I've had a few students.
Mm-hmm.
But it's me being self-taught. I may not know some of the terminology, some of the terms. I don't trust. I could teach someone how to play the music and write, but I never had a teacher to tell me things like, well, if you play in the key of C sharp minor, that's a hard key to play in. I never learned that. It didn't matter to me what key. I can play in all the keys, and then all of them are equally as difficult. Even the key of C. It depends on what you do with the key. I mean, you can put so many flats and sharps in one key, and make it where it's intense and things like that. The reach is a tenth that it becomes difficult. Okay. Yeah.
So, folks, we're here with Reginald Robinson, a classic Chicago ragtime musician, a standalone singular artist that we just heard. That was a 2005 MacArthur Genius Award winner, and now we can put in the resume, originator of the 2018 Piano in the Park series. So we got 5 quick questions.
Yes.
Cubs or Sox?
Oh, I don't follow sports, but I love
pick. You can't go wrong, man. It's not a pot.
Both.
Okay, well, I'll let you get I've never let anybody else get away with that. Thick or thin pizza?
I'll be honest with you, thin.
Okay.
Yes.
You're not showing your Chicago roots. Sears or Hancock?
I would say the Sears.
Sears building, okay.
Yes.
Lake or river?
Lake.
Okay. 12-inch or 16-inch softball?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good one. I don't know how to answer that one.
For your fingers, we're going to give you 12-inch softball. I don't want anything to happen to your fingers on a 16-inch.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
We're joined by Reginald Robinson. I got to be honest. I was so happy to meet you the other day in the park, and I'm really pleased you decided to come in for this.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Honor to meet you.
Okay. I want to do one other thing. Give me the last 2 albums. I want to make sure people know about them and hear about them. The music of Reginald R. Robinson.
Yes.
That was the last one last year.
Yes.
And what's the other?
The one before that was I would lean people towards Man Out of Time.
Man Out of Time?
Yeah, Man Out of Time.
All right.
Yes.
We'll see if we can get you some sales, man. All right.
Right.
Pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Chicago Stories with Mayor Emanuel. You can subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tweet your guest ideas using #ShyStories. Thanks for listening.